Hello guys, this is Movie Lover and welcome to this Movie Lover world. Today I'm going to explain a movie called This Is 40. Married couple Pete and Debbie are shown who has the most intimate showers. Pete informs us that he took Viagra today, that's why she's so energized today, but Debbie isn't pleased and walks out. She believed that because Pete no longer finds him attractive, he must use Viagra to be intimate with him. Pete claims that this is not the case, and that it happens with age, whereas Debbie believes that Pete's diet of fast food and sweets is causing him to lose interest. Debbie's birthday is today and she is years old. Despite this, she rarely discloses her age to others because she does not want to grow old so quickly. Pete, on the other hand, was also years old. His birthday was also coming up this week. They both have two daughters as well. One of them is a teenager named Sadie. Charlotte is the other child and she is 8 years old. Both sisters are constantly at odds with one another. Pete and Debbie begin to argue over trivial matters as they grow older, and as we get older our preferences for both begin to diverge. Debbie's favorite type of music and Pete's least favorite type of music. Debbie goes to her shop after this one day, which company employs Daisy and Jody. Debbie discovers the truth she notices that is missing from the stock she is selling and inquires with Jody about it. So Jody informs us that there will be less Daisy and that she must have stolen this money. Debbie, on the other hand, couldn't believe it because Daisy used to do an excellent job in the shop. Pete, on the other hand, owns a music store. Pete's business, where he sells old albums, was not doing well lately. He also contacted some former rock stars to promote his company, but the old album was not as well known today. As a result, Pete's plan does not do much work, and due to the loss in business, Pete's Emmy is also unable to be filled on time, and he has the option of selling his house. But he never tells Debbie about any of this because he didn't want to stress her out. Debbie informs Pete the following day that they should now live a good and happy life and they should now stop fighting in this manner, and then those people establish some guidelines for this. It's as if those people exercised every day. Pete must also abstain from sweet foods. Debbie must give up smoking. They will both spend more time with their daughters. Pete must also stop sending money to his father because Pete's father was always asking for more money than Pete, and Debbie both agree to follow these rules. Debbie tells Pete that night while checking the shop's CCTV that is nowhere to be found in his shop, and while Daisy might have done the work, Debbie couldn't hold her directly responsible because Daisy was bringing in money for the shop. Then, after checking CCTV, both discovered the truth. Daisy has an intimate encounter with one of her customers in the shop, but Debbie is unconcerned about any of this. The following day, Pete pays a visit to his father, Larry. Larry also has 3 more children. Pete informs Larry that he will be unable to send them any further funds. Larry, on the other hand, begins emotional blackmailing him, and he is forced to read Pete in order to give him money, but he keeps this from Debbie because he knew that if he told Debbie this, she would be furious. Debbie also visits her biological father. Oliver had abandoned Debbie's mother several years before he'd married someone else and was finally meeting Debbie after 7 years. Debbie tells her daughters at home after a few days that they must reduce the cost of the house, and she is taking the Wi-Fi out of the house to do so. The computer will now only run 4 minutes per day. Shelley becomes enraged. Upon hearing this, she used to spend a lot of time on the computer. Both became irritated as a result of their professional and personal issues. That's why they both go to a resort on weekends so they can take a break from their stressful lives. Pete tells Pete at the resort that he brought with him intoxicating cookies. They both then eat those cookies and both have a lot of fun when they're drunk. There are also intimates. They both return home after spending some time at the resort, and the monotony of those people's lives resumes. Jody informs Debbie one day that Daisy has purchased very expensive clothing as well as a car, and she most likely stole the money from the shop itself. Debbie began to suspect Daisy as well. Debbie then cleverly inquires about Daisy's clothing. Daisy, on the other hand, claims to have made clothes at home. Debbie notices Daisy's large breast. Debbie suspects Daisy underwent costly surgery as a result of this. However, Daisy stated that it is natural. Sadie invites a friend to her house on the same day. Sadie requests permission from Debbie to turn on the Wi-Fi, but Debbie refuses, which enrages Sadie, and she begins arguing with Debbie. Debbie, enraged by this, seizes both Sadie's phone and computer, and she discovers the truth. Pete and Debbie also check Sadie's phone at night, and they discover that a boy named Joseph comments negatively on their photos at school. Pete also receives a call from his shop, and he discovers that the albums have sold even less this time, and Pete's business has suffered even more losses, but Pete keeps this from Debbie as well, but his cousin tells Debbie everything the next day. Pete's financial situation is not good and his business is still losing money, and Pete continues to give money to his father. Debbie then visits the doctor for a checkup, and it is here that she learns she is pregnant. She is about to have her third child. Debbie was taken aback when she heard this, because she did not want a child at this age. Debbie had no idea how she was going to break the news to Pete. Pete and Debbie go to Sadie's school the next day, and Debbie inquires of Pete. He's not sure if he wants more than 2 children. Pete replies that he only desired 1 child, but 2 is also acceptable, but the third child is adamantly opposed. Debbie does not tell her about the pregnancy after hearing this, and she keeps it from Pete. Debbie eventually runs into the same boy named Joseph in the camp who used to comment negatively on Sadie's photos. So Debbie approaches him and threatens him. She advises her to approach Sadie with tact, and then she abuses him as well, which causes Joseph to cry. Debbie, seeing this, leaves him there and walks away. Debbie and Daisy go to the bar the same night. As a result, she has an easy time questioning him about the shop theft. Both times a lot, and a boy thinks Debbie is single and wants to be intimate with her. Debbie, on the other hand, says she can't because she's married. Debbie asks Daisy after the party if she knows anything about the shop theft. Daisy, as a result, flatly refuses. She did not take it. Debbie then inquires as to where she obtains so much money. Daisy also reveals that she works in prostitution. She becomes intimate with people by accepting money. Then she tells us that it was none other than the innocent-looking Jody who stole from the shop, because she is also a drug user. Debbie also reveals her truth after hearing this. She is pregnant, but she has not yet informed Pete. Then Daisy tells him that telling him about it while getting intimate with Pete will make him happy. Debbie goes to Pete at night with this intention, but Pete ignores her, making Debbie feel very bad, and she begins to suspect that Pete no longer adores her. Pete was already concerned about his company. Debbie then begins arguing with him. Pete becomes irritated as a result, and he begins arguing with Debbie once more. Then these two stop talking. Pete goes to pick up his daughter from school the next day. Catherine, Joseph's mother, arrives and introduces herself to Pete, and he advises her to look after her wife. Pete becomes enraged upon hearing this. Then he begins to abuse Catherine and Joseph. Catherine then complains to the principal. Debbie, on the other hand, meets Jody. She is the one who admits to stealing the money from the shop. She had to buy drugs and was still inebriated. Even though she is aware of this, she is fired from her job. Following this, Debbie receives a message from the school and is summoned. As a result, she attends school. Catherine blames both of them when she goes there. They've abused him and his son, but in the principal's office, both Pete and Debbie put on innocent faces and claims that he has not done anything wrong. Catherine is irritated when she hears this. Then, like Pete and Debbie, she begins abusing the principal. When the principal notices this, he declares Pete and Debbie to be innocent and sends them home. Sadie finds out a few days later his parents were looking through his phone and messages. They have threatened Joseph, and she is furious with him and scolds them severely. Pete's birthday party was scheduled for the following day. Debbie and Pete talk once more. Their parents are the source of their disagreements. If they both treat each other's parents well, there will be no conflict and they will be able to decide. He stated that he would remain positive throughout the day. Tomorrow, Pete's birthday, is the following day, in which everyone attends, including Pete's father, Larry, and Debbie's father, Oliver. Everything was going swimmingly until these people began arguing again during the party. Larry informs Oliver that's why he hasn't seen Debbie in 7 years, despite being significantly wealthier. So why is he not assisting Debbie and Pete? Debbie becomes enraged and tells Larry to stop asking for money from her son, which sparks another argument between Pete and Debbie. After a while, Pete cuts his cake. Debbie also begins smoking cigarettes in private, but Sadie notices him and yells at him, and Debbie's friend speaks. Inadvertently, Debbie should not smoke cigarettes while pregnant, and then the entire family listens. Pete then becomes enraged with Debbie. He didn't tell her about her pregnancy, and he rode his bike out. Debbie also begins to argue with her father. He asks her why he abandoned her years ago, and if he hadn't left, his life would have been just like Oliver's. Oliver explains that despite having money, he is not happy. His son is a drug user. His wife rarely speaks to him. He has none in the name of the family. He went to Pete's birthday party just to talk for a while, so he can spend more time with Debbie and her family. Debbie forgives Oliver after hearing this, and she asks him to stay at home for a little longer because he needed to find Pete. She then departs with Larry in search of Pete. Pete is riding his bike very fast in rage, and then out of nowhere a man opens the door to his car, and Pete collides with it. Then he begins fighting that man because it was his fault, but the man flees after punching Pete. Pete takes Debbie to the hospital. When Debbie and Larry see him, they both understand each other in the waiting area. Debbie, according to Larry, is very nice. As a result, his family has remained. We both forgive one another. Debbie then proceeds to meet Pete. Debbie also apologizes to Pete. Then Pete expresses her delight at the prospect of having a third child, and she's upset because Debbie didn't tell her, and due to financial constraints they will sell their home and downsize to a smaller home. Following this, Pete and Debbie's relationship begins to improve significantly, and the good connection between the two resumes and the movie ends here. I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Movie Lover will meet you again with new story. Till take care.